that's still ongoing. Did we do the Rubik's Cube challenge?
Oh,
that's still going.
That's still going? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Which one is it?
We're live.
I don't think anyone's actually. I don't think we've got any entries.
The script on it.
What number meeting is this?
0 entries. Sorry.
Do we know what number meeting this is? This is the X meeting.
This is the 11th.
11th?
No, the
10th? 11th?
10th.
Did we miss one?
We missed one over Christmas.
10th meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. You good?
We're live. Can we confirm we're live?
Yep.
We're live. Okay. Yeah. Is the audio good as well? I'm just kind of like, I think it is. It looks all right. Yeah, I think that's all right. All right.
Well, hello, one and all, to the 10th Brisbane PowerShell user group. So this week we're doing Azure Functions by our very own Michael Donato. Standard sort of format tonight. We'll just start off quick with the sponsors. I'd like to thank Hudson, great people, great performance, and Pablo over there for his great performance to get in the subway. Interesting Technology for the time on a lot of the talks, and Script Runner, who more shall become apparent next month. That's right. There was Iron Software on there, but we gave up the prize, so unfortunately he was gone. PowerShell news. I wasn't here at the last meeting, so if any of this has come and gone, please forgive me because I didn't look at the last set of slides. Usual suspects, the DSC resource kit for July 2019 is out. All usual stuff, Active Directory updates, Exchange updates, go check that out. PowerShell Get module has been updated to 2.2.1. A lot of people don't update that because it comes in the system, but the system one's usually pretty old. Yes. And I found doing update module can sometimes break.
It doesn't work. You actually need to go and
update to the actual latest package management.
Yes.
It can't update itself.
No, you need to force it. You do an install force and it overrides the system one. Same with package management 1.4.4. Yeah, because I had an interesting issue where I couldn't update modules reliably. It kept failing out, so I did an update. Keep going. The AZ module, the new Azure module, was up to 2.5.0 already. So that thing, has anyone used it yet? Yeah. Still on that one?
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. Just there still seems to be some
difference between Azure RM.
Migration sort of going from Azure RM to AZ.
Do you enable the aliases? Because you can enable the Azure RM aliases, can't you, for the AZ module?
No, I usually generally try to avoid aliases.
Well, it's like a global alias where if you use an Azure RM command line, it'll pick it up and use the AZ module.
Oh, I see.
It kind of just retranslates it within itself. It's like a global sort of setting.
Yeah, right. You have to have the Azure RM module obviously uninstalled.
Yes.
Otherwise that will
go crazy.
Yeah.
Outgrid View returns. So if you are on .NET Core 3, Outgrid View now works cross-platform.
Does anybody even use Outgrid View? Outgrid View is excellent, especially with
pass-through for selecting parameters and things.
I've used it like once or twice to see what it's about, but I've never.
I found it's not handy until you need it, and then it's a godsend.
Pass-through is where it's at, especially if you've been scripted someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
One of the things that they added in the new version was that you can actually show the command.
Yeah.
So it's for people that are not like fully familiar with how to actually use.
Show command's great because it just gives you all the parameters and attributes.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So that's utilizing. You need to install, I think it's the Microsoft.graphical.assembly, which itself might be based on Avalonia, which I could be lying on that one, could be mistaken. Avalonia is just like a cross-platform UI.NET assembly that's doing the rounds at the moment. The guy that does Iron Software, he's building out some PowerShell modules for Avalonia to do UIs. That's good. PowerShell as a .NET global tool. So if you've got .NET Core installed and you're using the .NET tooling on the command line, you can actually just install PowerShell PWSH, PowerShell 6.2.2, as a global tool via the command line now. You don't have to go get it from the website and install it. You can just do .NET. I think it's .NET-global install. PowerShell or PWSH, and it'll install just on the command line. Away it goes. Actually, it's pretty handy. And then the big news, it's got its own slide. PowerShell 7 Preview 3 is out.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot in this one. They're bringing, obviously close to release with the Preview 3. Windows PowerShell module compatibility coverage increases. So because PowerShell 7's based on .NET Core 3, that's in preview at the moment, they brought a lot of the .NET assemblies back into .NET Core. So whereas that was a huge gap obviously in got closer in 2 with the compatibility layer. It's now even closer on .NET Core 3 because they brought them all back in. So essentially the line is just try your modules. Something might work, it might not work at the moment. PowerShell 7 GA will be a long-term service release in line with .NET Core 3.x. So 3 years they'll run in parallel. So you'll probably find PowerShell 8 will come out with .NET Core 4. I would presume with that, but that's good, so you can standardise on PowerShell 7, which is probably the whole branding exercise with making PowerShell 7. Experimental features enabled in preview builds. On all PowerShell 7 preview builds from now on, experimental feature flags will be on as default in the previews, presumably so they can read telemetry from it, because the telemetry is also on by default as well, because they didn't know how they work. Consider DB null value and null string as null. So if anyone's done any database stuff and tried to do a PowerShell,
Yes, that would have really helped me a few months ago.
so yeah, you're coming from a database, the null is not equal to null in PowerShell, whereas now it is. So null is now equal to null when you do a database call.
So what does that actually mean?
The different types.
It's nothing. Yeah. No, but I mean, what does that? In what instance do you get a DB null?
When it's set to DB null.
I don't know. So
Well, if you're checking the database and you get a null value back from the database and you want to compare it to null in PowerShell because you're running a script.
Okay. Yeah.
They're different types.
So you're getting.
I was translating from database objects into JSON.
Yeah.
And they had like conditions on there, like if it equals null,
Yeah.
don't translate the value. But because it had to have the condition being if it equals DB null value rather than $sign null.
Right.
Just took a while to figure that out.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Because now it actually validates the null.
Yeah. So with the default SQL Server module, because there's a default SQL Server module where you can execute.
Yeah, there's a Microsoft one just called SQL Server.
Yeah, and that's the one that converts into PowerShell, and that's where that issue occurred.
Yeah, that module basically in the object that gets returned, if it's a database null, in PowerShell we were using, which was probably 5.1, it was storing it as DB null rather than just hash multiples, which is what I thought.
Yeah, okay.
That must be PowerShell engine quirk. Read host dash prompts now works for all inputs, so it'll accept symbols as valid input. Basically, we'll take in a proper string now. So we put an exclamation mark, it would error out and say invalid error. Support negative numbers with split operator, so you can do a right to left split. So you can do
From the end.
dot split, yeah. So -2, and get that right. The big one. A lot of people get excited about on the internet. For each object now has a parallel and throttle limit switch. I haven't had to look to see what it does under the hood yet. I have tried it in some smaller data sets and it actually increased time.
Okay.
Presumably because under the head it's obviously having to do some form of jobs or workspace or something. So obviously for larger data sets you don't really see it much, but on smaller ones don't just start throwing parallel into everything for the sake of throwing parallel into everything. Properly do a measure object and test that it's actually helping you out, because if you've got a small data set, it might actually hurt you. And then throttle limit, it defaults to 5 run spaces or threads or whatever it's using. You can set whatever you want. Resolve Apex repass points. So if you did a get child item on Apex, quite often you'll just get the weird symlink with 0 bytes. So it'll still show you the entry, whereas that will show you the actual item with the proper size and everything. And PowerShell as a login shell on Linux and Mac OS, so you can use it as an actual login shell instead of Bash or Fish or T shell or C shell or Z shell.
It'd be nice if we could just get a distribution that did that by default.
You mean like Windows?
I could use that. Yeah, like Windows.
Isn't that all Windows? It's just a Linux distro now, isn't it? That's what we're doing. So anyone else got any PowerShell 7 news or anything they want to add to that? That was there was some other stuff in the dev notes. Go read them, but that was just the highlights.
You pretty much covered it all, especially with the, I think the big one is obviously the general availability. So they will be brought in line with regards to the .NET Core. So I think that was November that it was locked in for. That's what.
Is it November? Is it they're going to release?
I think it was in that image I sent you on Slack. I just can't remember what it was. It's sometime this year they're going to go GA.
And the next version of .NET is dropping the core. They're dropping core and they're going to .NET.
They're skipping .NET 4.
Yeah, they're skipping .NET 4.
Yeah,
Yeah, because everyone's been using 4.6 and 4.7.
Yeah, so
.NET 5.
Yeah.
.NET 5 will be both core and Windows.
Yeah.
PowerShell 7 Preview 3 notes are quite interesting as well, because I noticed there's a couple of other commandments, I can't remember off the top of my head what they are, but have started getting parallel switches thrown into their parameters in the actual preview notes. So you can probably see later on you're going to start seeing a few more commandlets with parallel running there.
There's a few interesting things with .NET Core, new nullable types. I haven't read into it a lot, but better handling of null types, like you can set your intent, like this thing should be null or this shouldn't be null, and let the compiler handle a lot of it.
It seems like the ever-burning question for years of programming languages is null actually null.
Handling null types is always been the answer. Apparently this makes it a lot better.
So because we got a long talk this week from Michael, I went with a tip of the month rather than a module of the month. Some of you guys may have seen this if you're about on Reddit and all the rest of the places. As you can imagine, there's only so many places to pull news from. URI type accelerators. I've never used it before. I've never seen it. Quite often when I do URIs, I did do it. Like the first one there, we just cast a string type to URI and put the URI in. And then if you want to do anything with it, you know, you got to split it down, see what you get, everything like that. However, you can just cast it straight to URI, which I wasn't aware of. And then that just gives you all the attributes there, already split out, ready to use. Away you go, you can just call.
And it's not just websites, like web URIs, you can do file, FTP, anything you want in that.
And there's a whole bunch of type accelerators as well. Does anyone know? There's a command that you can run.
There is a command. I saw it yesterday. I didn't put it in the notes. I'll see if I can find it and put it on the group. But yeah, it just gets you all the type accelerators that are available on the
But type accelerator is just a shortcut for an actual type, isn't it?
Presume so, because you're casting a type to an object.
URI, I believe, like, because URI is actually an excellent example because it's used, that's actually its default type for invoke REST method in invoke web request. I think it's a type accelerator as well as its own type. So
because there's system.uri, but there's an actual URI type accelerator, which I think is a bit silly because you don't have to put system in the types. That's like in the automatic namespace. That's why I'm confused whether. I always thought it was just a nickname or a shortcut to a type. What's the point in having a URI type accelerator?
Well, there is one.
Yeah. Well, that was just
Microsoft, because Microsoft. But yeah, so I found it quite useful earlier in the week, so I didn't know about it. Saves splitting down strings and passing strings, which is
Really good file paths, which you use all the time. Yeah, get the leaf node and all that sort of shit.
Oh yeah.
File name of path.
Could use that tomorrow actually. And that is it for the news. If there's anyone else got any news they would like to bring up before we move on to Azure Functions? We good?
Yeah.
Demo already. Demo, go.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
I love talks to start with a demo. I didn't
Yeah.
talks.
Actually, before we do that, we've got scripting games. So
There's a misplaced.
it's still ongoing. The whole concept was to create a Rubik's Cube solver using PowerShell. Extra points for graphical solver. Submissions to the script selecting games Slack channel, and yeah, window will be randomly selected. I heard that Jordan has something in the works. Is that?
Oh no, I was wondering.
You're just
whether it's
wondering,
still
okay.
going.
So literally, if you send me a script with the right host, you're probably going to get some free EK water cooling stuff. So, also, yes, I think that's about it. I do have another one lined up for the next one. So if I don't get much more interest in it, I'm just we'll scrap it and we'll just go to the next one. So, yeah.
But we do have next month lined up, so we probably should.
Probably for the following one, yeah, that's fine, yeah. Well, just something, so I've got something else lined up. So, you guys all came here for Microsoft Azure Functions with PowerShell. Firstly, for the guys watching online, around the world, wherever, you can ask questions. The chat is being moderated by our facilitator, Mitchell. So he will basically be able to answer questions or ask questions on your behalf. So you guys can fire away according to the rule set. Yeah, I think that's pretty much that. So tonight, it's going to be a lot to get through. So if you guys fall asleep, I'm going to totally understand. If there's a lot of a drop in viewer count, I totally understand. There's going to be a lot of people here. I'm just going to quickly throw it out. Who's actually heard of Azure Functions or used Azure Functions? Okay, so that's actually pretty good. It's actually a much better response than I thought it was going to be. But we're actually going to be doing a bit more of a deeper dive into what Azure Functions is. I'm not going to go super deep because we could be here all night. So I'm not going to be talking about any sort of the preview 2.0 commandlets that you're going to be using. We're just going to be doing basic demos and things like that so we can see it in action. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the intentions and things like that, but we're not going to be going super deep. So is all good? Everyone good? Sweet. Also, if I'm kind of mumbling and stumbling along, my daughter is sick at the moment, and I am not in the best shape at the moment. So, forgive me. So, tonight, like I said, we're going to be only covering Azure Functions for PowerShell. We're not going to be talking about Logic Apps. We're not going to be talking about Event Grid. We're not going to be talking about Microsoft Flow or Azure Automation. Just going to put that out there. That's too much. All right, Peter's gone. That's all good. So I'm just going to throw that out there. We're just going to be focusing on functions, and we're going to be explicitly focusing on PowerShell. Alrighty. Azure Functions is the combination of code execution with event data triggering. So I kind of like, this is actually a really good slide that was at Ignite when one of the, it was explained the whole concept of why the logo is the way it is basically it's taking the code and then combining it with the events from Azure. So its functions are an event-driven functions is an event-driven serverless computer platform. So it's basically it's your server as a code, also code.
It's runtime as a service.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just like I'm kind of not really great at this. All right, so go next. So like I said, Azure Functions is a serverless orchestration platform. I'm going to quickly stop and pause on orchestration. It's not just run this, do this. It actually is what Functions is designed to do is to actually orchestrate your components. So is anyone, with the exception to Wayne, is anyone here used System Center Orchestrator? Okay, so the whole concept, yeah, System Center Orchestrator was awesome. I loved it. I think it was excellent. System Center Orchestrator was basically you build workflows and things like that, and you could basically, create an Active Directory user. You could go, send this email here. You can get approvals and this kind of thing. It's very much built like that in that sense, except it's all event-driven on the server in a code cloud platform. So I'm going to we're going to be going through a lot of stuff here. One of the things I'm going to talk about at the very end. So I'm going to kind of need you guys to hold your hats. We're going to be going through different parts. At the very end, we're going to talk about this orchestration component. We're going to talk about durable functions. So a function basically is a piece of code within the orchestration. So obviously, again, we need to kind of start thinking about orchestration. We're not thinking about just code. We're going to be thinking about orchestration. The reason why we have functions was really kind of put into place was because developers didn't really want to care about the infrastructure that they're running on. They just wanted to run their code. They just wanted to focus on their code. And what this whole platform allows us is to be able to actually orchestrate complex processes. So a really good example is, let's say you've got your shopping cart, you got your website from an application programming, from a website perspective. You got your shopping cart, and for example, when a user adds an item to that shopping cart, you might want it to trigger a specific orchestration, and that orchestration might go and pop up the spinning wheel on the side and go, hey, click if you subscribe to us and you might get 25% off. That might be a function. And that function, that when it runs, is calculating what kind of return in terms of a discount, or whether there's a discount being applied to that. So that's basically a bit of an example of an orchestration. So, and I've got obviously a really big and in there. You only build on the runtime. So this is one of the most important things with functions, is that basically you're not build on, if your function's not running, you're not build on it. One of the things I actually didn't put in the slide deck I'm going to quickly touch on is basically cold starts. So when you're using generic compute, or you're using your functions, this is mainly on just cloud compute platforms, if your functions is not being used, it's going to go into a cold start. And basically what it means is Microsoft will power down that instance, and when you want to invoke a function, it'll take a little bit of time for that to actually start. So it basically it'll do whatever request it will need to do, but it's going to obviously take a bit of time to spin that instance up and then process it. So cold starts is really, really important to understand because it does affect performance. Now with things like on-premise and things like that, you can kind of get around that, but at the same time, it's just worth noting. All right, have I lost anyone here yet?
I've got a question.
Yes.
Can you keep it warm?
Yes, you can keep it warm. There's specific ways you can keep it warm. You can have your own instances, or you can pay for that.
Okay.
So,
If there's no non-runtime costs, there are storage costs.
well, yes, there is storage costs in the sense that basically, okay, you are going, like you have blob storage. It's basically
blobs or modules.
yeah, it's so basically we'll talk about the blobs, but basically the blob storage is really used for like all the logs and things like that. But again, you're paying minute amounts. So if you're
standard Azure
it's
blob storage.
yeah, it's just standard blobs. Actually, it's not standard blob. It's actually tier 2.
Okay.
The reason why is because it needs to use the actually no, it doesn't. Actually, no. Sorry, that's a queue. So
Yes, it uses storage.
it uses storage. Yes. All right. But the thing is, you only build on runtime. I remember reading. I don't know if this is true anymore. If your code is sleeping, so if it's waiting for something, you're not build. But I'm not sure. So I remember reading it, but then like this was a very, very long time ago. This was last year. But I haven't actually come across that again. So yeah. All right. So let's get stuck into it. So there's 2 versions of Azure Functions. So we have version 1.x and 2.x. So you see there I've got 1.x and I'm just going to say it's not recommended. I'm talking in the concept of PowerShell. The reason why it's not recommended is simply because it just lacks features that the preview for 2.0 does. At the same time though, 1.0 is out. It's a lot more stable than what 2.0 is. So until 2.0 releases, PowerShell 2.0 releases GA availability.
So 2's in preview.
Yes. Once it releases, well, to be honest, okay, I'll talk about this in a sec. 1.0 is still technically is experimental, so you kind of
Experimental preview.
yeah, experimental preview. They're both very, very, very comforting words. But things like obviously C# or anything like that, you kind of like yeah.
So 2 is not like the version 2 of the runtime is not actually in preview. It's actually on.
No, version 2 is GA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, you've got like a whole bunch of different languages you can run on. So you've got C#, F#, things like that. I will quickly talk about that. But yeah, it's only specific PowerShell. We're only talking PowerShell here. 2 is recommended, and the reason why is because it basically actually we'll quickly talk about 1 for a sec. So it has experimental languages. So experimental languages in 1 don't scale well. They don't support all the bindings. They don't use they don't use experimental features for anything you rely on. There's no official support. Support cases are not should not be opened for experimental. Version 2 doesn't support experimental languages. Support for new languages is added only when languages are supported in production. It offers language extensibility. So JavaScript and Java languages in 2.0 are built with this extensibility as well.
And is it true, Michael, that version 1 is Windows PowerShell and version 2 is...
Yes, PS Core. Yep, 5.1 and PS Core.
Is it still running on Windows?
You can specify where you want to run it when you create the function.
Yeah.
So you can say whether it's a Linux or Windows. Next. So this is just a quick table of all the different kinds of, well, this is just a shortened table. There's a lot more. But basically you've got the C#, obviously it's GA in .NET 4.7, it's GA on .NET 2.2. That's going to go to 3 when they obviously catch up. Definitely worth noting. JavaScript, again, Alex is the biggest JavaScript person now.
We're Java.
F#, Java, obviously PowerShell and Python. So obviously PowerShell, Python, and Java, yeah, kind of don't really use it.
So say when .NET Core goes to 3.0, will you have a choice
100%.
between the 2?
I would say so. So the way that it works at the moment is that you can only stipulate between the first, like whatever. But I would say though, what they probably will do is they'll probably update it to, like I would think that they'll update it to core. Like I haven't kind of got access to their pipeline, so I've gotten access to it, but I just didn't see that. So yeah. Key concepts. So before we're gonna obviously now we're gonna start touching the water of Azure Functions. I'm gonna talk about some key concepts to remember. So a trigger is an event that starts the function. Now you can only have 1 trigger per function. Just want to make sure that kind of settles down first. A trigger is what defines a function to be run. So basically, it just so
a function can't have multiple triggers.
exactly. So a trigger could be like, for example, a webhook. It could be a, for example, if we're using a storage queue, it could be a file just got dropped into that. So a trigger is something that causes that runtime to start. Then we have what we call a binding. Bindings are basically is a way of declaring I can't even pronounce this word. Is declaratively connecting another resource to the function. So bindings can be connected as input and output, or both. So basically, data in, data out. Think of it as a pipeline. If you've got a commandlet in the middle, you're basically piping data in, you're piping data out. It's pretty basic. The cool thing is that you can have multiple. So we're going to quickly touch on some of the bindings because there's some really cool ones there. One of them is Twilio. Twilio actually have their own bindings. I was like, that's so cool. Anyway, because that was like, yeah, Twilio. Anyway, so basically you can mix and match different bindings to suit your needs. So it's not something that where you have to be like, you know, you can have, for example, an input of service bus or an input of a webhook, actually a webhook, an input of like, yeah, service bus, and you can have an output of a Twilio SMS message. So that's a really good example. Does that make sense? Everyone on board? Cool. All right, so we're talking about some common triggers here. These are just some ones, literally there's a list. I don't really have time to go through them, so I'm just going to throw some basic ones in here. So we've got blob storage. So that's basically your create, change, remove. So any sort of file actions, like, you know, you get your file system watcher, that kind of thing. That's basically your general blob storage.
So if you've got something that just works it back a bit of blob storage, that
it'll trigger it. Yep, it'll trigger it. It's really cool. Then you have Cosmos DB, so any sort of things occur to that. Event grid, event hub, HTTP webhook, service bus, and timer. So for the demos tonight, we're going to be using HTTP webhook because that's generally the most common. It's really quite handy. We're going to be using timer, and we're going to be using blob. I've used service bus, and it's exceptional. It's so good, and it's incredibly quick.
Is the webhook something going into the function to kick it off, or is the function polling something to detect it?
It accepts a webhook. Think of it as like a Discord webhook that if you wanted to write something in Discord, you would like send an HTTP request to that.
but is it only on like a get or a post, or
we're gonna cover that.
So you can do it any post.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna get into that.
Basically any webhook trigger.
Common bindings. Blob storage. Again, you can basically do stuff with blob. We can do stuff with event grid, event hub, HTTP at webhook. So you can actually write back a REST response if you choose to, and then service bus. So you might have a service bus message in, and you're going to have a service bus message out. You're going to have a service bus message in. You might have, blob storage out.
So is the binding the output?
Correct.
Okay.
So binding, it can be input or output.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, what a binding is you basically it's.
So you've obviously got the trigger that starts the function.
Yeah, the binding is basically the data that it connects it together. Azure Functions, PowerShell. Am I doing a demo? No, I'm not. Cool. All right. Is everyone still on board? Cool. Cool. All right. I had what in here? I'm like, what? Like, what? All right, so we're going to be talking now Azure Functions, PowerShell. So function versions, we've talked about this just before. We've got PowerShell 5.1 is runtime 1.x. PowerShell Core 6 is going 2.x. The moment they go .NET Core 3, I do think PowerShell 7 will be made available. So by default, functions, PowerShell runtime can only persist. Okay, so there's a couple of, actually no, that's one. No, that's the next slide. Sorry, I've got my notes that are all over the shop because I was copying and pasting slides. All right, so function 1.0 limitations. So basically concurrency, that's the first big one. So basically it can only run a single process or one invocation of the function at a time. Now, if you are trying to handle it, you can change it, but yeah, not recommended. Excuse me. The second one is, PowerShell functions don't have the same debugging capabilities as what C# has. So your debugging is absolutely shocking. It's literally just blind debugging, you know, kind of like write host and did it hit this write host, that kind of terribleness. It only exists in the portal. That's another thing that's a big pet peeve. So what I mean by that is you can't actually run it in VSCode and then test it in VSCode and then run it up. It's something that basically kind of like think of it as an earlier version of Azure Automation without the ISC plugin for automation, where you could actually run it and then deploy it. It was kind of like it was more like automation than actual functions. It supported 3 triggers, which was HTTP, timer, and queue. So not much. And basically 5.1. They're only on 5.1. So
we'll avoid it.
Yeah. The thing is though, like if you're running automation, like if I was running automation, like it's kind of funny though, because like they both have their same, like they have their areas, and I kind of do think that this is more automation than it is functions. Like it does have the capability to accept webhooks, things like that, and timers, but the thing is automation can do that as well. And it's kind of like, well, why would you use? Yeah, and it doesn't. So one of the key things as well is it doesn't really work in the bigger scheme of things. So I can kind of see if you've got a really complicated project and you kind of want to, it would make sense if you wanted to quickly write something in PowerShell versus writing a complicated class in C# and then kind of just trigger it as a just a quick and dirty way to get your functionality up. But in terms of like feature comparisons, they're pretty much the same as automation. So
as soon as 2.0 becomes GA, there's no way you use
Shift delete. 2.0 limitations. Implementation's not GA. When it becomes GA, I'll be so happy. This, again, we're going to talk about durable functions at the end. It has support for durable functions. This is like the reason why functions exist, is basically the orchestration of code. So in this concept here, having support for it just obviously is a plus one for function 1.0. Oh, sorry, 1.x. Has PS Gallery support? Oh, sorry. It doesn't have support for durable functions at the moment. Sorry, I just kind of saw about that. That's going to be coming. So obviously they're going to be active developing on that. Yeah, but once it is, shift delete. PowerShell Gallery support. Yeah.
How does that work, Michael? So
Is it pulling it in on run or do you install?
do you pay for the import module?
So it's basically just imports the module to a blob storage, and then it just
but is it always there, or does it pull every time it runs?
Yeah.
It's on the instance. It's on the instance.
Yeah, but every time the function runs, is it pulling in the module that's declared in the file from PS Gallery, or does it just do it at once?
It
Exactly.
should do it the once.
And obviously, some module imports take quite a long time.
Yeah, so
import.
it's because it's deploying it on the instance. Like it should just pull it in.
Is that just offer requires, or do you need to put it in somewhere else?
I think you need to load the function. The function. I think you need to load the module.
So you just like install module, give it a name.
Yeah. So there'll be I haven't really the way that I remember reading it. I haven't done it, but the way I remember reading it is basically a guy just pretty much uploaded it onto the instance server and then basically just called it from that.
It's pretty manual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you pay?
You have to actually create a modules folder.
Yeah.
Inside the subdirectory and then have everything there in the subfolder under there.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
and then
you have to go connecting via, was it Kudo or something?
Yeah, Kudu.
And then you go to the FTP screen and you can actually drag and drop.
We'll talk about Kudu as well.
So,
All right. And the use of module AZ functions. So you can't manage your functions from within a function, unfortunately. But no. All right. So because we're going to be using HTTP triggers, I quickly want to talk about authorization levels, because this is going to be a question that's going to get asked. So a HTTP trigger authorization level, it controls the accessibility of a function. Now, basically what it does is it gives you a key that helps you obfuscate your HTTP endpoint during development, but it's not intended to be used in production. If you're wanting to do things like that, you can basically turn on app service authentication and basically use what we call a client. So basically the user has to authenticate, and you can use Azure Active Directory.
you can basically use the ASC environment, so Azure App Service environment, or you can use something else. Oh, Azure API management. So you can, so the ASC basically what it will do is it'll give you a dedicated hosting environment where you can run your gateway, and you can basically kind of control how you want to how you want to deal with it. Because realistically, you kind of like if you expose that, you're kind of exposing it to the internet. Like for obviously for dev purposes or things like that, it's all right, but obviously not really production. So different types. Now there is a lot for C#, but unfortunately with PowerShell we only get 3. With C# we do get some others, which is quite nice, but with PowerShell we only get 3. The first one is anonymous. Anonymous is basically no URL key. So it's exactly what it is. So if you've got a HTTP endpoint, you can literally just go hit it and it'll go. Whether you get or you post, and it'll do what it needs to do. You have a function key, which is basically a local. It's just a URI string. Oh, sorry, a URI string. It's a URI key value, query value. So basically, just it's a bit like a password, like a static password, and that's what's going to be used to actually initiate your function. And then the other one is an admin key, which is basically pretty much just used across all of them. Obviously, I could bit of docs down the bottom. You guys will get the slides. Forgive my terrible notes because they're all over the spot. Oh, yeah, not that yet. Okay, sweet. So we're going to be doing a demo of PowerShell Azure Functions version 1. So I'm just going to get my notes up because
I presume there's some sweet VSCode extensions for these.
Yeah. So damn it! Don't save. Sorry, it's probably going to save and then it's going to like. Don't tell me that. I've got like my notes on here. So while we're doing that, we're waiting for our notes. I'm just going to quickly.
That's nice background. Who's got that on the background?
That is quite nice. I can imagine like mass productivity in the background like that.
Okay, can you all see that? Is that like, I don't know how to, I'm probably going to zoom it in, but
Control.
maybe we do this on Edge. Oh, there we go.
Let's take his edge.
Yeah.
I have to use Edge because I don't want to have to log
You should
in.
really hand out little mini binoculars to people at the back there.
The disposable
Yeah, it was only fine, yeah.
Okay, so what we got here, hang on, if I can actually open up my,
Good old Azure taking up half the screen real estate with stupid sliding.
Yeah, you can almost click a little double-headed
Top
arrow on the
left.
left there.
Yeah.
It's
Top left.
pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
It's like the Xbox 360 dashboard.
Boom.
I think that's where they got it from.
I think they did get it from 1990.
okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new function app. I'm just going through my notes on what I'm actually needing to do. Okay.
The other PowerShell preview 7 thing we're talking about with the switches was switch. The switch function has had parallel reserved as a keyword.
What does that mean? You switch it on or not then?
Well, it means switch at some point is going to get dash parallel.
Oh, right.
Switch has, they have like a regex parameter to.
On switch.
Yeah.
I've only used it for quick menu selections.
Yeah, using create a new resource group.
Yeah, they've got a few in there. Case sensitive, regex, file, exact outcome.
Oh shit!
Doing this case sensitive.
I've got to delete it now. I'm going to create another one, another resource group. Which one was that? No, it's still provisioning. Or just create another one.
Make another one.
Okay, I'm going to have to go through and clean all these up. Some Microsoft are like, how many demo? Azure function, Briz, Pug, demo.
It's like demo,
The-
real demo 1, real final demo 1.
Final, yeah, final
real,
production.
real final demo. Definitely.
3, are you sure 3? Gold
Yeah.
past the real. I always go 99 if I'm not sure.
You've got the AAA at the
Yeah.
front.
underscore AAA.
All the way at the top.
Is it? Don't. Oh, okay. I thought you guys were literally trolling me, and I was like, oh
No,
man.
It's really confusing as hell, but it will work.
Well, it's like Windows 10. Like they basically like Australia was up the very first. Like you just hit E, and then Australia was straight.
That annoys me so
Oh,
much.
it drives me nuts.
Not Node, JavaScript should die.
Sure you can.
I'm just gonna run. I'll just run .NET Core.
Well, if that's the case, you don't need to create a new one, huh?
Yeah, I'm not gonna create it.
C# then.
Like I think you just need to specify. Oh, I'm just gonna go to the resource. Like I'll just go to the resource and see if it's like what we need to. Yeah, that's fine.
I think about JavaScript there, we've got like 1100 Node.js published libraries on NPM.
All right. So first thing we need to do is we actually need to change the features. So just need to quickly go to my Docker. Like when my phone decides to unlock.
Like 3 liners.
Yeah, so basically we need to make sure we're setting the runtime version. So what we need to do is we actually need to go to our platform features. We need to go to function app settings. And you can see here we got, once it decides to load, we've got our runtime version. That's set to version 2. We need to set that to version 1. So this is just version 1 PowerShell. This is not version 2. This is version 1. We only need to do this for version 1. Is there any questions online? Like, is anyone asking questions? Or there's probably not many people watching. They're like, okay. So with regards to, so we need to change it. It's going to take a little bit of time. While we're doing that,
That's good. So you can put a quota in so it won't, so people can't blast it if it goes nuts. And
yeah, you can do like you can pretty much do whatever you want, like in terms of scalability. It's very scalable. Yeah.
I love how in the background, uninstalling Linux and installing Windows becomes 3 dots just go. It's completely changing operating systems right now.
See if I can create a new function while we're waiting for that.
So you're just doing version 1 for the demo?
Yes, we're doing version 1, then we're going to do
Just
version 2. We're just going to do it in VSCode, and it's going to be significantly easier. So while we're waiting, which one would we do? Actually, what we can do, we can actually take a shortcut here, because realistically, this is like my pre-prepared one, and we don't actually have to wait for Linux to uninstall and Windows to install. So we're going to create a quick, HTTP trigger. Now, one of the things you can see here is, old mate, PowerShell ain't there. We actually got to turn it on using the slider, and then it pops up. So basically, I just quickly want to show you guys, this is all that's available in terms of it. So you get your triggers, your timers, and your queue, and serverless community. But they basically are really just the 3 supported that we're talking about. So
what's that language for that? Because there was a lot more in there. Those all the experimental languages?
Yes. I'm just going to call it HTTP trigger 1 PowerShell because I'm just going to show you how to create it. I do have pre-prepared codes because I kind of wanted this to go a little bit easier. So like I was talking about before, we've got the authorization level. So this is really what I was talking about. We can have anonymous. I'm just going to make it anonymous. It doesn't really matter. And then we're going to create it once I actually get that. So like so. Actually, I'm going to quickly close Spotify. That's my rain sounds because I was trying to sleep this afternoon. All right, so so this is our function. As you can see, it's pretty basic. Interestingly enough, you can actually see it's actually doing get content. That's how it's ingesting the HTTP information. And how is it passing it back is using an out file. Yeah, it's kind of funny. But what we're actually here to do is we're actually going to see something cool. So, yeah, cool. So one of the things I did was we basically just got our standard HTTP trigger. We're just going to get our function URL. I'm just going to copy that. We're just going to fire up PowerShell. I'm sure we can just do it in our console. Open a folder. Version 2 PowerShell. So don't worry about all the code above. We'll come back to that. No, don't you do an update because you broke me last time. So we can just do a REST method. That's my URI. I'm just going to say body. Hang on, what was my notes? Sorry, I'm just like quickly go through my notes. Okay, yep, URL key body. Okay, so basically in this instance, it's accepting a body of our name, and we can just put Michael.Ensenada, like so. And you can see it's actually responded back. Now I actually put in there the PS version table as well, so we can actually see that that's PowerShell version 5.1. I'm going to ask this because I can't remember. How do we zoom in on the console for VSCode? Because you guys can't really see that.
Control plus.
It's the Control plus. So like, there we go. So as you can see there,
There you go, drag it.
yeah,
It's VSCode, it's just browser window.
it's pretty basic. Any questions?
So the hello Michael's is a return from the runtime.
Correct.
That's what when it
Yes.
exited the game.
So we can actually have we'll have another quick look at the function. So this is basically the code that's running. So you've just got the name, which is request body.name. I've just set the information and all that. And then basically I'm just doing a hello name, and then I've just got my own PS version table set there.
The encoding have to be ASCII.
I don't know. That's pretty like I just don't use it. I just don't use it.
And right at the top,
I would actually no. I would assume so. Yes, because it does. There would be. I've seen issues with encoding on our file with Linux, but this is actually not. This is not 5. So
Just ASCII is very limited. Like,
Yeah.
you've got 127 characters there.
it's really difficult to reply.
yeah, I don't know. Actually, no, I don't know because it wouldn't be Linux because it's running 5.1. It's not actually running PS Core. So yeah,
Right at the top is the $ REQ, or is that a bill? Is that variable come?
that's a predefined.
Okay.
Yeah, so rec is basically a file path to your HTTP request. So it's the way it kind of worked behind the scenes was, I'm guessing, it basically took it and then dumped it onto an instance, which then started as PowerShell, which you can ingest. Oh look, it's quick started, fantastic. So that's basically that. I'm going to need to turn a lot off. One of the things I quickly want to show you guys is that you can actually have other others as well. So we can have a HTTP triggers, which we're actually probably looking at, and we can have a timer as well. So the timer is actually a little bit interesting to configure. So I've got it here, so we can just run our timer. The way the timer works is if we look, we actually, where was it? So I'm just trying to find where the manage. You declare, here we go. No, it's not there. Where is it? Oh, it must be, no, sorry. When you create the, actually no, here it is. Sorry, no. Where is it? So when you create the timer, you're basically creating, okay, yeah, you've got your schedule here, and basically you've got a cron schedule that you define. So what I've just said here is just run every minute. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So is that, any questions, comments, queries? Cool. All right, let's get going. So let's keep going. All right, let me just quickly check my logs, make sure I've completed my demo. My logs, my notes. Yep, sweet, cool, that's done. So, oh no, don't close. All right, so the next one is, so we're gonna go back from current slide, and we're gonna talk about setting up Azure Functions 2.0. Don't do what I did. Simple as that. One nice looking barbecue. Why doesn't my instance look like that? It is pretty much what I thought for the first couple of weeks. If you don't follow the documentation like I generally do, you will regret it. So I can't emphasize that enough. Really follow the documentation. So setting up PowerShell Azure Functions 2.0. I wanted to put this in here because this was the lessons that I learned. The documentation says this, but I'm going to try and make it a little bit easier in terms of how I found it was, yeah. So the first thing we need to do is install PowerShell Core. This hasn't been tested on 7, but the interesting thing was is when I did the demo, I just actually installed PS Core 7. I was like, yeah, give it a go, see what happens, and it works. So cool. Basically, then you install the PowerShell extension for Visual Studio Code. If you have it already installed, fantastic. You're fine. Install .NET Core SDK 2.2 plus. All the links are in the slides. Install Node.js.
Do you need it? Because I don't want it on my system.
You need it.
I'm not happy. That's Azure Functions.
It's
I
nice.
forget to install Node.
The reason why is because the Node, you don't necessarily. It's an npm package install.
Oh, okay.
So when you install Azure Functions, you actually use you're actually doing an npm install. So you go npm install. It's like G Azure Functions or Azure -functions -core-tools. So that'll install your core tools for Azure Functions. And the last thing is once you've installed the Azure function, you need to enable PowerShell support for in Azure Functions extension. So when you install your Azure Functions, actually that's one thing I forgot to put in there. You need to install your Azure Functions extension. You can do it within PowerShell. So if you don't do that, and I actually did it and it worked for some reason. So I was like, you basically, yeah, you're good to go. Any questions? Because I'm going to show you a demo.
Is it different actual Visual Studio?
Visual Studio is different because it's already embedded. So when I was doing it in C#, it's just there. Like you just run it and it's good.
So if you've already got Visual Studio, it could have also already be there.
I don't think it supports PowerShell because the PowerShell, because the PowerShell extension ties into it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it supports in Visual Studio. Like, if Tyler's online, he might be able to validate that.
I do have one question, sorry, I just have to step out for a bit. Step 4, install Node.js. How did you actually do that? Because it seems to be different ways of doing it.
I just went and grabbed the reinstaller and then ran it.
Chocolatey.
Okay, so that's basically the first way. Second way is use Choco. So what I did was I installed via Chocolatey, and then I kind of half installed it. Like I ran it by Chocolatey, and I was like, yeah, okay. And then I'm like, no, I'll do it manually. And then I just had 2 installs side by side, and it was a barbecue pit of disaster.
Everyone stop installing MSI's manually. Just use Chocolatey. Apps get Windows.
Does Microsoft recommend installing it via Chocolate? What do they say in the documentation?
No. Well, it was in the documentation. That was out, and I kind of like, but like I just remembered it was in there, so I was like, you know, I'll add it because Chocolatey is pretty like it was actually a supported Choco package by Microsoft.
Yeah, the thing that concerns me about Chocolatey is that you can't always trust it.
No, the thing that supports me.
If you actually use it to work, they recommend using it on the Get
All right, so we're going to actually have a quick look at a quick demo. So I pre-recorded this because I didn't think it was going to work because my faith in my own lessons learned wasn't high. So, and I got it on the first take, so I was actually quite happy.
Good job, Pat.
So there's no sound, so I'm just going to talk about it. Where's the OneDrive?
OneDrive person on the left.
Yep, Bruce Park.
Not that one.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right.
There's no priority to
All right. So what we've got here is I'm installing PowerShell 7 Preview 3. Just rolling through that. As you can see, I'm installing on the member server, Alex.
Oh yeah, nice.
I was like, I'm not spinning up another instance. I'll just use that. It's becoming a jack of all trades. I'm now installing Visual Studio Code, so we're just going through installing that. So for the guys who are actually watching, like you're interested in how I'm doing screen cap, I'm using OBS, so Open Broadcasting Service software. So I've installed VS Code at the same time there. I've closed that pop-up because that's me. I typed in VSCode for no reason. I don't know why. And we just installed, installing the PowerShell extension. And I think we're also going to install the Azure Functions extension. Oh, and it went to white, and I was like, get back to dark.
Should I turn that off?
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm not. Okay, so now, next thing I'm doing is hovering and thinking about what I need to do. And now I'm installing the .NET SDK. So I'm going ahead and installing that. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. At this point in time, I'm actually getting pretty bored because it's not going fast enough. So I'm actually contemplating on installing Node.js. So that'll happen while this install is happening. And there we go. That's me being impatient. And then this is me getting caught up.
So do you actually have to install Node.js?
To install,
or is it only if you want to debug?
you want to write you need the Azure Functions tools, so yes.
Oh, okay, you need the Azure.
Yeah, yes, you do. So I installed it, then I've retried. Obviously, I've got Node.js. So
Yeah,
I think that's pretty much it. What else am I doing?
Use Windows Sandbox.
I'm getting really, really lazy. Yeah, I should have used Windows Sandbox, but I was just like, I had a member server that wasn't doing anything. It actually was doing stuff, but I'm like,
what's it called? Member?
me and Alex had a demo, and I needed to spin up a member server off the domain controller. So
I need to change the password.
oh shoot.
I haven't changed it.
So now I'm installing the Azure Functions extension, so we can see there's a nice little Azure icon down there. And what I'm doing in now is, we'll get questions at the end because it's just going to go. I'm installing azure-functions-core-tools. So I've just done my npm installer, and now that's downloading azure-functions-core-tools. You guys, if you want to see the demo, I'll make it available on Slack, so it makes it a bit easier. So that's installed.
52 packages.
Yeah, 52 packages.
Yeah, it's a security nightmare.
So this is me going through looking for it. I couldn't find it, so I was actually surprised. They might have updated it, but the last time I was doing this, there was a checkbox where you actually needed to enable it. There was actually a box you needed to enable the PowerShell preview in Visual Studio Code. I couldn't find it, and I was like, all right. That's me kind of like wondering where it was. And then, yeah.
I did see in the extensions list, PowerShell preview listed.
Ah, there you go. There you go. So they must have changed it. So that's me rushing because me not taking time to read, which is me being me. So this is basically, I'm getting to the point where I'm kind of like, yeah, all right, let's give it a go, see what happens. So what I'm doing here is I've gone to Azure Functions. I'm just going to create a local instance of the functions. Actually, no, wait, I'm having another look because I might have, now I've had a gutful and I've gone to Azure Functions. I'm just going to create a local instance. I'm just going to call it temp because that's my favorite directory. You can see there you've got PowerShell preview. I'm going to select that, select HTTP trigger. Let's go ahead and create that. Let's just give it anonymous.
Oh, right.
It's all built into the, yep. And there it is. But now, let's actually get some good stuff happening. So I'm now going to just run a function host start, which is basically just start functions. There's my awesome lightning bolt. I love that lightning bolt so much. I think it's the coolest thing. And there's my trigger. Done. And that was done in one take. So I'm very, very happy. So that's basically how you install functions. And that was in 4 minutes and 36 seconds. So that can obviously be sped up with with some changes, with me not actually reading some documentation. So let's jump back in and let's go to the next one, which is from current slide. We've got PowerShell Azure Functions v2 demo. Alrighty, this is where we're going to have some cool stuff. All right, so again, I've got preloaded functions because I kind of wanted to show you guys, but I actually want to have some pre-lit code in there so I can actually do some things and show you guys some cool things. So let me just bring up my notes. Okay, so we're going to go back to, this is okay, perfect. We're going to go back to our remote instance. And we've got, I actually got my Docker file. I was like, we're trying to get Key to work, and I was like, oh, it's not working. Okay, so on the left-hand side here, we got all our, I've got some, get rid of that. We got 2 functions here. So what I have, I'm just going to quickly start these so you guys can see this. Function host start. Now, one of the big things about this, and this is going to come and bite you guys with, I'm going to talk about a little bit, is you need to make sure you're running Visual Studio Code in the directory that you're working with. Don't run it in a parent directory because this won't work properly. Sorry, it will work, but you're going to have a lot of issues with debugging. Again, lesson learned. So you need to be in the right workspace. So we've got our HTTP trigger, but we've also got HTTP timer, which is basically a timer that will trigger, I think, every minute along those lines. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to open up, as you can see, I'm just going to quickly show it. We just had a timer trigger. So timer's just triggered. We've just got an executed timer trigger demo. So we'll quickly go through the code so you guys can have a quick squiz at the code. So we're not kind of just looking at nothing. Don't save. Because I probably made changes. Okay, so we've got a HTTP trigger. So what I've got in here is basically, this is just a pre-populated one. I've added some extra information. I've added some little bits and pieces in here. I need to actually do this. Which is basically, we've got a wait debugger in there. We don't want it to actually cause issues. So at the beginning, we've got our request and we've got trigger metadata. So what the request is the body of the message or the query string. Basically, it's just a request. The trigger metadata is exactly what it sounds like. Trigger metadata contains all the information about that actual request, all the metadata. So what type of request? Was it a HTTP post? Was it HTTP GET, port, that kind of thing. One of the cool things that you can do with functions, especially with the HTTP trigger, is in the JSON file. We have what we call a function.json file. The JSON file basically dictates how the bindings and the triggers. So in this instance, we've got our binding and trigger. So our direction is basically we've got a HTTP trigger, and the direction is in. It's a binding and a trigger because obviously it's accepting information as well as starting it. We've got our name, which is just a request, and we've got our 2 methods, which is get and post. So you can put all the HTTP methods in there. So it's not just limited to what get and post. You can put puts, deletes, patch. Whatever. So, and it's just basically, it's just JSON. So it's nothing special. Then you have obviously the run.ps1. This is basically your runtime. Interestingly enough, the function name is derived by the folder. It's not derived by the PS1 or anything. It's derived by the folder. So if you wanted to have multiple HTTP triggers, for example, and you wanted to call, for example, the first HTTP trigger troll Wayne, and so you go, endpoint / troll Wayne. That's how you would specify it. The second thing is obviously we've got our timer trigger, so it's the same thing. It basically declares that. So if we have a quick look at our timer trigger, again, that's basically its binding. We can see the trigger type, we can see the direction, we can see the schedule. It's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go into too much detail with this because there is a lot to cover. Like there is so much to cover in this specific sense that it's just going to be, we'll be here all night. So I'm kind of like, I'm trying to be aware of time here. The next thing is obviously we talk about the direction and obviously the schedule. We've already talked about that. Then we obviously have, again, our runtime. So we've got our, just basically whatever you want to put in there. So what?
I have a question actually.
Yep.
The names of the files in there, they have to be run.ps1?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they have to be run.ps1. If they're not, it just won't work.
Yeah. So all those files have to
yes,
be named.
they're specific. What's the word? Not specific. What's the word?
Static?
Static, correct.
But they're also created every time you create a function.
Exactly. So when you create a function, you don't actually have to do this. You can just go, I want to add a new function. So to add a new function, what we're going to do, I'll just quickly show you how to add a new function, and you can copy the folder, which is what I generally do, but I'm going to show you the other way.
So is each one of those folders a function?
Yes. Yes, that each one of them is a function. Okay. So what we can do is we can just go here, we can go create function, and we can actually select, got a whole nice bunch of templates. So we're just going to go ahead and we're actually, oh, no, go back. Oh, hang on, I'm just trying to remember, what do we do? What's my notes say? I will just do a HTTP trigger. So I'm just going to call this HTTP trigger map. And we're just going to use it anonymous. And if we go back to our code, there's HTTP trigger map. All done. Super easy. Super cool. So what we can do in here, so if we do now if we go back, one of the things I actually want to quickly show you guys is when you make a change, and this is something that Alex loves so much, if you make a change in functions, so if you update a line of code, functions will automatically restart for you. It's already there. Now I actually do it because I kind of do it because I just want to see the URL endpoint so I can actually do my change, but it's already there. Super cool. Like it's one of the things I love. But what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to open up the IC because it's just easier to kind of, actually no it's not because it's super small. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go invoke, hang on, I actually need to stop it so I remember what the URL endpoint is. Control C, yes. I'm just going to do a function start. So what we got here is we're just going to do this one.
Apparently you can control click those.
I'm just going to do an invoke REST method, URI. So what this is actually expecting is sorry, security of my phone keeps locking. I'm like, actually need to read my notes. Okay, so I'm just going to do it via query string. I'm not going to do the body. So it's actually expecting name. So we don't need to specify the method because it's default get. So when we run it, we can see hello Michael Zanata. There's our, we've just triggered our REST. But what we can do right here though is if we go back, I've actually got it to dump out all, I'm just going to move this right up. So we can actually, I've basically dumped out the, so right here, this is the PowerShell HTTP trigger function request, and then we've got the start. That is basically the JSON that gets ingested under that, under the params. So that request variable, that's all the, that's basically, you get the body, you get the header, all that kind of stuff in the request variable. Down here, this is all the metadata. So you can see you've literally, it just keeps going on and on. So you get a lot more information about the invocation, obviously, you know, the query, things like that. So it's really quite handy to use. I just wanted to dump that there so you guys can see it. I am going to also quickly talk about logging in Preview 2. So when you create an Azure function in Preview, in Azure Functions 2.x, actually even in 1, it will create an application insights instance. Everyone, like, does people know what application insights is? Yeah, it's really cool. It's stupidly cool. The amount of filtering that you can do with it is just awesome. Now, I was talking about what you can. I was talking with Wayne a little bit earlier about what you can do with it, and it's mental. Like the KQL is just ridiculous. The biggest thing with the app insights for logging with with PowerShell, is that if you want to create a log entry, write information. All the standard write streams are caught and automatically logged. So you don't have to worry about it. Now you do have to set the log level, but at the end of the day though, you can have comfort that basically you are logging your events. So food for thought, but it's worth mentioning. because once you start getting really cool, like App Insights has ridiculous filtering capacity, and it has amazing ways you can actually visualize your actual serverless code. So you can see when orchestrations, things are breaking, you can see literally stack trace errors, literally right in front of your eyes, and you just go drill, 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 drill. Yep, there's a stack trace error here, blah, 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 and can start troubleshooting it. With C#, you can actually even bring that information down into Visual Studio. So it's ridiculously, the customization that you have with it is awesome. And that's why one of the things I'm super passionate about is, it's just so great. It's so awesome. As you can see, we've got our triggers being triggered. That's pretty straightforward. The next thing we're going to do,
someone on the stream just copied you.
I don't really care. I don't really care because it's going to get turned off after. Okay, cool. So, don't tell me I deleted it. I think I deleted it. Oh well, we're going to have some fun. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to create another one. We're going to create a blob. So we're going to watch a blob, and then we're actually going to have some fun with it. So let's do it. So again, let's go back to Azure Functions. We're going to create a new function. We're going to go Azure Blob Storage Trigger. Now, blob trigger. It's going to ask, are we using our local settings.json? Okay. So I'm just quickly looking at my notes. Okay. Sorry, I just wanted, before I go any further, I don't want to skip anything. The local settings.json file is basically where you put any connection strings that you need for local debugging or for your local instance. So if you need to talk to a database, if you need to talk to a service bus, this blob, things like that, that's really where you need to put it. So what we can, basically I'm just going to say is, yes. And then what we've got here is we've got Azure Blob Storage Trigger. Now, I've already got my permissions and everything set up for this, so this should work. I should have pre-recorded this, but we'll see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in there, in this path, I'm actually just going to grab it from the PowerPoint and copy and paste it in, because I'm worried that I'm going to get it wrong. Oh shoot. So this is just block. This is my blob storage, or my block storage path, and the name declares the name that we want to monitor. So it's just like monitor that file path. It's pretty straightforward. So we've gone ahead and created that. You can see actually functions is just reloaded. So you can see the host is just initialized and it's just restarted. So it's really cool. We just added that. And now we've got El Blobo here. So we're monitoring a blob storage. What I've got is, I've got some files that I want to upload. My daughter is absolutely in love with In the Night Garden. So we're going to upload some photos of Eagle Piggle and Upsy Daisy. If you guys are not familiar with it, definitely get into it. It's awesome.
Especially marijuana first.
It seems like you might be a bit too much into it.
Got no choice. I remember when you and Vince were super into Play School.
Loved it. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Thank you for the push. So so what we're going to do here is I'm just going to quickly go home, try and find my, I think it's V1 PowerShell. I've got so many resources out now, so I'm like, it's going to be a mission to try and find. I don't even remember where.
Search for storage you can. Maybe that might note down. If that's what you're looking for.
It's a storage. It's a storage. Yeah.
Is it the third one?
It might be. Sorry,
It's
I'm
a good
like,
name.
yeah, Bruce Pug demo. I'm like, nah, it's not that. So I'm just doing this using Storage Explorer Preview, but like if you're going to use the Storage Explorer app, we're just kind of doing it through here because I don't want to install Storage Explorer Preview. We've got demo. So now I'm going to upload some files. Just trying to think where it's going to default to. My desktop. So if we go down to BrisPark sessions, August, demos, images. So we've got two nice photos. One's Eagle Piggle and one's Upsy Daisy. Yeah, get that going. Good stuff. So
Click open.
oh, you want to check it out?
No, we don't. Click open.
All right, so we're going to upload them. So you can see they're being uploaded. So if we're going to head back over here, you can actually see that they're just being triggered. So you can see upsydaisy.jpg, and Eagle Piggle's probably up there too. So this is like, I was kind of thinking about what would be a really good application, like, yeah, and there's eaglepiggle.jpg there as well. So it basically triggered an event on an actual file add. It's pretty cool. So you can imagine like you're trying to do, like you can actually watch blobs. So from an automation perspective, imagine like, for example, custom uploads a file there and you just like, yep, go run that.
Yeah,
so you don't.
Classic case of this is
So it's changing. It's changing the content. It's changing the way that we're actually doing our code from run at a specific point in time to event driven. And this is the whole reason why functions are so powerful, because it's based off an event. It's not based off, you know, we're waiting on a timer as per se. Like we do have timers available, but it's more along the lines that we're actually waiting for something to be added. So and then once it's added, do something with it. So if it's an audio file, process it, do things like that. Cool. So that's basically my demo for Functions 2.0. Does anyone have any questions?
I imagine that you'd be able to share code. If you were to drop the PowerShell file at the parent directory, like next to the gig or next to the host.json, then you'd be able to dot source that into the run.ps one. Because you would upload this entire thing to your app server.
Yeah, you would. I'm guessing you're more along the lines of if you want to like have generic code. So like you got
a bunch of functions or something, you want to share a bunch.
Yeah, I would say so because it's basically pretty much the premise of modules really. Like if you've got a modules, you've got to reference a directory. So I would say it's exactly the same for a function. Yeah.
I'm not sure about individual code, man. I don't know if the modules you don't put them in.
Yeah, so I would say because it's all it is just an instance. So think of it as just a file server. Like you have access to a file server. So now one of the really cool things is that you can actually define in here. If I can find it. You basically can talk about how you want to actually configure your cold start. So you basically want to say, I want to import this module. I want to do this. I want to do this. This is actually not it. Where is it?
So is it in your host or something?
No. No, it is. It is. Sorry, it is. This is where your profile for your cold start. So you can basically say, all right, I want to have all these modules imported, ready to go. So you're not kind of humming around. Biggest thing is at the end of the day, though, you know, you can really, it's really up to you. One of the things I forgot to mention with functions. Is that yes, like I said, it was preview, which means there are still issues with it. One of the issues is PowerShell, the debugger has issues with secure strings. And I literally couldn't figure it out for ages until one live stream. I actually just said, all right, I'm breakpointing before, I'm breakpointing after, and then literally just step, hit, I was getting an Azure Key Vault secret and it just hung, couldn't do anything. So I actually chatted to Tyler and he was like, yeah, I think there was an issue with that. So yeah, cool. Alrighty, cool. How's everyone doing? We've got one guy left. I think that's all right there. I think he might have had something on. So that's basically the demo. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to ask again. Like we've got plenty of time. Actually, no, we don't. We've got about half an hour, but yeah.
Maybe you're coming up to it, but
yep.
You're creating these functions locally and running them locally.
Yep.
The process of actually getting them up into Azure.
Right click, deploy to function app.
Okay.
I'm serious. Like I should quickly show you right now. It's 2 seconds of code, or 2 seconds of work. So if I want to deploy this, just right click. Right click.
It's not right click.
I think I actually need to have the function app created. So I've got a local instance of it running, but so if you have the function app created, so what I mean by that is if I have,
Is it the little color come out in the bottom?
sorry, where?
Well, that looks like a really awesome icon.
Publish.
Oh, that's Git.
Yeah, it's Git.
I think it's the third one, the arrow, next to arrows of function.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah.
That's live share.
Top. The third one.
That's the like
Yeah, it's got to be that, sure.
That one.
Okay, yeah, so what you can do is you can select and we can deploy the function app. So we can actually select the app that we want to deploy to and it'll just automatically deploy. Actually, the way that I used to do it was I just go right click and
There you go.
Yeah.
That worked.
get rid of that. I'll just, like, for example, with the BrizPug remote bot, I'll just right click and then just deploy function app. That's why I did it. I just didn't actually know that was there. So thanks, bro.
All good. One random thing I found as well, it doesn't default to like Australia or anything like that. So when you create a new function, it picks like US coast or some random location. And I haven't been able to figure out how to set it to Australia.
I think the way that I did it was I created an instance local. I created an instance in Azure and then connected it. So obviously you can see all that functions here, and then connected it, and then So
if anyone figures it out.
All right. So obviously, it's going to keep blasting. We're nearly there. So hang on, guys. Debugging your functions. So Azure Functions version 2.x supports inline debugging. Makes me so happy. Basically, VSCode, so a Visual Studio Code allows you to start the debug session, and basically when you have to attach, so you're actually attaching to another PowerShell process. So it's not like, the IC where you just go start and you can hook straight in. You're actually attaching to a process. The way that you do it is basically you need to ensure that the attached to PowerShell functions debug configuration is in your debugger in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to show you guys it, so don't panic, but it's something you guys need to be 100% sure that it's there, because if it's not there, you're going to have issues. Also, make sure your Visual Studio Workspace is attached to the function root, or you will have issues. I've talked about this before. I'm going to say it again. You need to have that. If you don't, you are going to have issues. Using the commandlet wait debugger will basically temporarily pause the execution process so that you have time to hook your debugger in. So, has anyone debugged a C# service here?
In
Visual Studio?
function.
In Visual Studio?
Yeah.
C#. Oh, the one with the big thing with the C# service is that basically for you to be able to debug the service, you actually need to start the service in a separate process and then be able to hook in. So you actually have to have code on your actual service to wait until the debugger starts, until the debugger hooks in, or you just got your code running and you're having, a whole bunch of code executed and you don't actually know what's going on.
That's a problem for really fast running code, isn't it?
Yes.
Long running code.
Yes, exactly. So this is just basically a quick and dirty thing. Now, obviously, you can start your function. The function will load as per normal. That's completely fine. But basically, for example, if you hit a URL endpoint and you've got a timer trigger or something like that, it'll trigger, it'll hit wait debug, and then it'll pause execution. So it gives you time to hook in. So there is an issue, like I talked about, with handling secure string. So if you are, start praying, because no, if you do, basically what I found was work around the issue. It will eventually, obviously, it'll be fixed. So there's no, I'm not kind of, you just got to have to work around the issue there. So things like what I did was I basically just put it in, put the code, like the secure string in there for the time being, and just had a clear text so I could get everything working, and then basically converted it to a key vault string. That's obviously going to get fixed, but it's just something that I had to kind of fight.
Just a note from the stream, if you can repeat the question, whenever there's a question, because they can't hear the question on the stream.
Okay, yeah, sorry, no problem. Okay. So, yeah. Debugging functions demo. So, we're going to just use the HTTP trigger. I'm going to show you guys how to debug a function. So, let's go back to it.
Just when you're starting there, Michael, can you attach it to the function in the cloud, or can you only attach it? Can you only debug it when it's executing locally? Can you attach a remote debugger?
You can do remote streams. I don't think you can do remote debugging.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Like, I'm just thinking about how it's built, and I don't know if it supports it. But I could be wrong. Like, I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not sure.
So just imagine there could be slight inconsistencies between running it in your local system versus running it in the cloud. I mean, I don't know if there would be, but you know, that's what we're thinking about that. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got wait debugger commented out here, and I'm just going to put a wait debugger there. So I've just got my set information preference to continue, so you guys can see that. So we've got our wait debugger. It's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to save it. This will relaunch. Yep, so job host stop. Wait for it to restart. And then we're actually going to hook into it. We're going to debug. While we're waiting for that, actually no, sorry, no, we can't do that, sorry. Sorry, that's not how we do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to debug. See, I've got my PowerShell attached to PowerShell functions configuration. You need to have this configuration. It will add itself, but it's important to have this there because this is how you're going to be able to attach to the function. So what I've got is I'm going to start it. So we can see it's starting, all good, and now it's in a ready state. So what we can do now is we're going to trigger that HTTP trigger endpoint. If I can remember, not that one. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember. Actually, I'm scared. Sorry, don't worry about me. My mind's wandering around. So what we can do, I'll just start an instance of PowerShell. So we can just go invoke REST method, paste, and we started our one thing. There you go. There's our debug. So you can see it's basically what it's gone through that. It actually hasn't even gone to that. It's actually it's gone above it. Well, and then we can start stepping. So, like, you know, any sort of debug, we can actually do stuff with it. So, there's a request, things like that, standard debug stuff. So you can obviously step into, you can add your inline debug, you can add your inline breakpoints, so step, 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 that kind of thing. Yeah, any questions? Super straightforward. Took me a while to figure out, so that's why I'm
thanks for wasting your time, so we don't have to waste their time.
Well, it's just lessons learned. Like, I think it's the biggest thing is lessons learned. Obviously, you have all the goodness of VSCode and its call stack for the watches and variables, so it makes it really easy to manage. But it's just something that there's the lessons that I learned that basically, that I kind of obviously want to pass on. So, all right, we're nearly there, guys. So I'm just going to stop this. So, does anyone online have any questions? Any stream questions?
No stream questions.
Okay.
Can we uninstall Node.js?
It's going to be the ongoing question. All right, so we're going to talk about the advanced tools, or Kudu. So I kind of wanted to touch on this because it's there. People kind of wonder what it's about, and that was me when I first saw it. So I kind of thought, hey, let's keep the Simpsons things going. I was like, yeah, that sounds like. So basically, the advanced tools for app service, also called Kudu, just provides access to advanced administrative features of your function. Simple as that. From Kudu, you can manage your system information, your app settings, your environmental variables, site extensions, HTTP headers, server variables. So it's very, very handy. You can launch Kudu by browsing to the SCCM endpoint of your function, and it'll be like, for example, my function app. So you know your URL that you get at the beginning is your function app, and then it'll be like .scm.azure-websites.net, and that will give you your Kudu. Or you can basically do it. Okay, I'm just looking at my notes. I think I'm actually fine for this one. you can actually just quickly jump it via the portal. So if we jump into the portal, sorry, I'm literally just going to look here and see if there's anything in here.
Yeah, because functions actually run on app service, Windows, Microsoft Azure app service.
Yeah.
And Kudu is the management platform behind app service. Yeah. Allows you to do, run command prompt and all sorts of stuff, upload it down a file and all sorts of stuff. And you just get it with Azure functions.
Yeah, in CI/CD pipelines for deploying a web application or function app, it's almost identical.
Yeah, right.
So what you can do is you can go to platform features, scroll down, advanced tools, Kudu, and then open up a new tab.
We obviously can't see that here.
Oh, sorry
it's
guys.
a beautiful picture, but perhaps one of the best. No,
So, sorry.
I thought you were just trying to hide something.
No, I was actually. So basically, you can go to yes, I know. So you can go to function apps, platform features, and under platform features you can scroll down and you can see Kudu, and then it just disappeared because JavaScript. No, my terrible screen. So once you can see here, this is your thing. It's fairly straightforward. So basically you see information about your environment, all that kind of information. It's fairly basic in that sense, but there's a lot of other information. So you can see system info, all that kind of Shazam, app settings. Fairly straightforward. I'm not going to spend much time on it, but I'm just going to kind of just go through it. You do have a debug console as well, so you can jump in here and just fire up your
This
debug.
looks like something they've bought.
So you can actually see like your file directories, and you've got a nice Kudu remote execution. You can do PowerShell or command prompt.
I think Kudu is actually completely open source as well. Pretty sure.
You've got your file, your process explorer. So basically, same thing. And then basically tools. So you can do your diagnostics dump. So when you do a diagnostics dump, it'll basically collect all the trace logs and things like that off application insights, and it'll shove it up into a nice zip file, and then you can download and have a look at. Obviously web jobs. So basically web jobs, just trying to remember what it was.
Web jobs is like a really bad version of Azure Functions. Like background tasks.
Yeah, it's background tasks, things like that, yeah. Then you've got webhooks, zip push deploy for CI/CD, things like that, deployment scripts, things like that. So, and finally you've got site extensions which help you manage your function. So it's obviously integrated into the gallery, so we can add let's encrypt, and I'll put it in there.
Awesome.
Straightforward, not really, yeah. Any questions? Cool, good. That's Kudu. Okay, so I want to talk about running Azure Functions on-prem. So there's two ways to run Azure Functions on-prem. Hang on, let me quickly go back to extend so I can have access to my notes. Resume from current slide. So basically you've got the runtime, you've got your Azure Function Runtime Preview 2. Now you see this big deprecated? It's deprecated. It only supports the Azure Runtime, the Azure Functions version 1.x. So yeah, let me make your own mind up on that. But the way it works is it consists of, similar to an Azure Automation Hybrid Runbook worker, where you would have a management role, which basically would manage in essence, it would manage all the nodes, and then basically you would have your worker role. So basically your workers are like your hybrid runbook workers on Azure, hybrid runbook worker. The management role would basically just dish out the requests as per what's required. It gives you a very cut down version of functions, but it looks pretty much the same. The same UI is pretty much what you'll see. Yeah, but it's deprecated. The second way of doing it is using Kubernetes with a Kata, and that's basically it's Kubernetes it's Kubernetes-based event-driven auto-scaling. So it pairs seamlessly with Azure Functions and tooling to provide event-driven scaling in Kubernetes. Kubernetes, obviously, Kubernetes-based functions provide functions runtime in a Docker container and event-driven scaling through Kita. So Kita can scale down to 0 instances when there's no events occurring, and it can scale up to how many instances you want. It does this by exposing custom metrics. It's fairly, yeah. One of the cool things about it is that basically it doesn't, actually, I'll quickly go to the next one. Kubernetes scales onto event demand, not CPU. So it means that if there's a lot of events, it'll then trigger, but it's not going to trigger it based on CPU usage. So it's actually a different, it's much smarter in that sense. There's really just 2 components. You've got the runtime, which is basically the trigger, the log manage executions, and then you've got the scale controller, which is scale basically monitors the rates of events and targeting your function. So just, yeah. Questions?
Yes, one. What's the advantage of running Azure Functions on-prem as opposed to just having like local PowerShell scripts or modules?
I think it's more along the lines of if you want to have, like, for example, you've got an edge environment, or you've got like you want to run something side by side. So let's say you've got a, you know, for testing purposes, you want to have that data captured side by side, then you would do that. So yeah, it's really just kind of like you can run, it's basically just offering those every solution, like, but it's really kind of just used for, yeah.
Hybrid deployment.
Yeah, hybrid deployments, things like that. So
in cloud structure and then accessing on-prem something.
So supported triggers. So basically just a storage queue, service bus, HTTP. I have no idea what that is, so I'm not even going to talk about it. Yeah, it's very straightforward. I was going to do a demo. Docker wasn't playing ball on Windows 10. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen. All right, so we're actually making fairly good time. The final component is durable functions. So I was talking about hold your hats. I want to kind of bring it back at the very end because it's very important. Okay, so durable functions is basically an extension of Azure Functions that allows for your function orchestration and code. So what I mean by that is you actually write the code to do the orchestration. So it's not like a configuration, it's literally code. You can manage the state of your function, so you can basically do check, for example, like a checkpoint, a restart. The really cool thing with this is, so a really good example is, let's say you've got a user provisioning script, and then you've got HR need to approve that before anything happens. That is actually, that's a state you can actually use. You can actually wait for user input. The really cool parts, it can scale out, so you can fan out, fan in. It's completely asynchronous. So let's say you've got, you want to create, you've got 30 users you need to create. You can basically provision 30 users side by side. It's completely asynchronous, so it's really quite cool. It's not supported in PowerShell, unfortunately, but it will eventually get there. Orchestration this is really where functions is quite powerful. And then the final one, state is never lost. So imagine you got your functions instance, you got 10,000 users, you're trying to provision, server goes belly up. That state's not lost. It'll basically pick up and continue where it last left off at its checkpoint. So if you have a recycle, like an IS recycle, Apple recycle, you have a VM reboot, so something unexpected, your state is never lost. So you can have confidence in your code, and you can have confidence in the actual deployment, in the orchestration of that. That's really quite powerful. So you don't have anything stuck, which is for automation perspective, it's actually really awesome. Questions?
Would that be the primary use case for a durable function?
Durable function. Durable functions is really basic. So you have your standard function. Your standard function is like your little bit of code. It's like just a little snapshot of code. Your orchestration is actually dictating something. So you go.
It's used to tie them together.
Yes, it basically is connecting everything together. So your orchestration is really kind of your pipeline, as it per se. You're just basically saying, go do this, go do this, go do this, do this.
Are you also able to use durable functions to get past the 5-minute runtime? limit of functions?
That's a good question. I don't know. Actually,
There's a 5-minute runtime?
yeah. Okay, sorry. Actually, no. 5-minute runtime for functions, durable functions is different. Yes, that's correct. Correct me if I thought you were going to say something, but I remember reading. It just came to mind. I do remember reading that there is like a specific, because that's what I remember reading somewhere that's like it does have that. So I do think that's correct, but I'm not 100% sure. So there are multiple types of durable functions. So we have activity functions, which is your basic unit of work. So that's what I was just talking about before. We have our orchestration functions, which describes how the actions are executed. We have entity functions, which basically it defines operations for reading and updating small pieces of state. So if you got a little bit of thing you want to update, you just go to that. And then you've got activity functions, which is your basic unit of work. Actually, I already mentioned that. Sorry. Yeah. I know. I had client functions, which was managed instances of orchestrations entities. Okay, so a client function. So client functions are basically they're your entry point for durable functions. That's what's actually going to start a durable function. That was supposed to be there. It's not. So sorry, guys. So I've got actually a really cool screenshot. This is Orchestrator, System Center Orchestrator. Brings me back. I love it. So a good example of a client function is your initialize data. So initialize data is kind of where you're bringing your input and then you're triggering your items. Your orchestrator function is this entire overarching item. That's basically orchestrator function. And then you've got your little activities in the middle. I can't demonstrate client because we're not really, we could say that kind of like if you're updating state, you'd be basically going, okay, change this value or something like that. That would be really updating this state. That's it. That's it, guys. Questions? I'm going to open the floor. See how we go. Yes.
There is a question from Glenn.
Yep.
Isn't the payment model for functions per runtime, which means the 5-minute mark will quickly add up? So the question is, what's the payment model for functions?
It's runtime.
It's on runtime.
It's on runtime.
Yeah. I think it's not on sleep though. I think it's definitely on runtime. You're paying per runtime, but it's not on sleep. Yeah.
I think it's per second. So
Yeah.
Consumption plan is built based on per second resource consumption executions.
Okay, there you go. So it's per second. Yeah.
Pricing includes a monthly fee grant of 1 million requests and 400,000 gigabytes of resource consumption per subscription.
So it works out to initially you get a lot for free. You get a lot for free. It's really kind of catered for those websites. So if you want to do something ad hoc, you're going to be fine. So yeah. Anything else? Anything else? Any other questions? All right, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Cool. Thanks, guys. I'm just going to quickly go right back to the beginning because. Yeah, cool. All right, yeah, thank you, guys. That's pretty much it. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it was a lot to get through. I feel like everyone's kind of just taken a lot in and then kind of have to digest it a bit. So, yeah, flip me Slack questions or anything like that. That's fine. A really cool demo was like, which was the other day was I did that remote execution bot. And that was powered by functions. So not the best. Like again, it's kind of like it's not designed like but it's just kind of shows you the capacity how we can quickly spin up something and then have that run. So obviously, client server disconnected completely. Only thing that was connected then was obviously an Azure function. So yeah. So in terms of its potential, it's just it's enormous.
Super useful for big data sets where like you've got to do a small amount of work per object. That's where I've run into it a lot. So like drop an image, I need to convert it to 4 formats or an audio file or something else. Quickly do it on that one object and then exit. So you don't have to run it once a day and it takes 2 hours.
Well, that's exactly right. And
that's right. It just goes bang and does it.
I was actually thinking about a really good example. What would be really handy would be like if it was supported with AWS, would be like the two-way file sync. Because at the end of the day, though, then you wouldn't actually have to have a scheduled task run. It would just trigger.
I mean, you're talking about OneDrive and stuff, event-driven.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely event-driven, which completely changes the way that you write code. You're not writing code on a. It's is it there? Is it there? Is it there? Is it there?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, that's pretty much it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Guys online, if you liked it, you know what to do. I'm not going to mention it because I hate talking about it. I do actually want to ask if you guys are watching this, please follow the BrizPug channel. That would mean a lot to us. So, twitch.tv/BrizPug. Go ahead and follow that, and that'd be awesome. That's pretty much it. Anyway, thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.